Welcome, we hear you.
Good. We'll wait for Matt to get on. Mr. Roth, can you hear
I can.
us? Okay, good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just remind everybody before I call the meeting to order. Tony reminded you that you got to show your face in the future if you're on virtual, so we know it's you. So I just make sure everybody's aware of that. And we've got legal counsel here who's ready to roll if somebody doesn't do it right. So anyway. So I'm just waiting. There's a couple people coming on. I'm just waiting.
I just am not in my regular collared shirt today, so I figured I'd spare you my my t-shirt.
Mr. Mayor. Mayor Coos, can you hear me?
Hello. Excuse my dog. He thinks I'm talking to somebody else.
I'm sorry, we had two mayors. We had three.
So let me turn you up.
Mr. Sadowski, are you there?
I had to turn you up to drown out the dog.
Yeah, very good. Okay, appreciate you muting. I just wanted to make sure that you were hearing me.
I am.
Good morning, welcome. It's our monthly meeting. So I want to welcome everyone. I'll call it to order. You received a copy of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda. I have a motion second.
Second.
Second, thank you, Joe. Any questions on the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Under the announcement, that item has been tabled. We're going to deal with that in a different way. You received the minutes for July 2022. I hope you had a chance to review the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Dr. Mario, thank you. Second,
Second, Joe Brandt.
thank you, Joe. With that, any discussion about the minutes? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I can't do that. So we're going to show hands. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have, first of all, we have treasurer's report for July and August from our treasurer, Mr. Ham, and then we will introduce the audit update. Mr. Ham.
All right, I'm not going to speak to the July report, but I'm going to talk to you a few minutes about the numbers in August. Consolidated financial report, so we got that. Chart. Walk you through that quickly. The bottom line here, please.
I think someone had time to figure out how to access this.
Okay, we have a good, you gonna put this on the screen? Yeah. The treasurer's report.
You know,
I'm sorry.
So for August, the bottom line here is that our financial condition remains in very good shape. Our total liquidity, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner,
Okay.
is at over 1.4 million. We've got over $1 million in the money market. Additional funds in CEs. At the end of August, our operating account balance was 89,000. That is since the 35,000. I'll talk more about that. No real change going for our report in terms of liquidity. Our ESCA funding and distributions continues as we've done in the past. We're paying expenses related to the ESCA only after we receive funds to do so, and our receivable position is twice. In terms of our balance sheet, the only number here that caught my eye, we have some additional what to do with our payable. We have some what I'll call quirky things I think going on in QuickBooks with invoices related. Ken McIver, she's in the process of doing stuff research. I don't know that $25,000 payables, you know, there to stay. Some of that, maybe late into the journal, supposed to be working with our auditor, to make sure that we get those on this correct. Immaterial is still, the rest of the.
What if we
For
add?
the month of August, had total expenses of $42,000.
I know, but like,
Have been favorable variance in terms of $11,000. On a year-to-date basis, which we're early into our new fiscal year, we've
right,
seen
right.
And then of that, over how much?
we're also about over $400,000 in revenue. We have spent $77,000 change in operating expenses on a yearly basis. So our current surplus, which was decreased to $337,000. Our spending is running at $15,000 favorable to the game that outlined. But so I would say our financial condition remains very good. We have some minor issues on our balance sheet and football system. Payables. We'll do that in the hope is that we have final answers to that stuff in September. The other recommendation I would make is with our cash balance and our operating account down to 35,000, funds from the money market account over. I recommend we do that at the level of $100,000. We have some more expenses covered for the work that's being done on the embankment. And we'll think about what will be required for ongoing operating needs between now and year end. I think that should cover us. We look at what we have at account. That's what we put into the calendar year. As I've said this before, I like to kind of minimize the amount of funds that we keep in that operating account. That's our account number, and that is in most circulation. So just one thought, that's good medicine. So I recommend that $3,000.
Okay, I'm gonna accept motions on two items. The first is to accept the August 2022. Do we have to approve July as well? You
It's just
said-
one treasurer's report on both.
Okay. Well, you didn't speak to July. Is there any issues with July?
No.
Okay. What is, accept motion. Why didn't we get a copy of this?
We notified everyone at our last board meeting that we wanted to do training times. We requested them.
Okay.
Just to save paper.
All right, very good. I agree. You say the tree.
I'll move we accept the treasurer's report.
I have a motion by Mario to accept the treasurer's report. Do we have a second?
Second,
Thank you very much. Is that Jim?
yes.
Hey, Jim, can you show us your picture?
Can you see me? What do you need, Carl?
Just need to see your face.
Oh, can you see me?
No.
What the hey? Hold on, let me wipe this thing off. How about now? I had it before.
No, you keep working on it. Okay.
How about
All in
Hold on.
favor?
There you go.
There we go. There we go.
There was a little button there that said video.
All in favor of approving the treasurer's report, raise your right hand, please. Thank you, it passes. Okay, now there's been state the second.
It's recommend we move $100,000 from one market account to our operating.
Okay, that is a motion from the treasurer. Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. Okay, any discussion? Questions? Okay. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Sandra, are you voting on this? Okay, thank you. Okay.
We have Chris Lee, right? Nice to meet you.
Well, thanks for hiring us.
Good, glad to have you here with SB, SB, I should say. Appreciate you, sir. You gonna walk us through this draft of the audit, right?
Yep, and the tree that's really safe. Basically, they left the audit materials, but I'll pass this. I didn't-
Yep.
Have a brief presentation in the front, the draft. and then follow that.
Thanks.
I'll go ahead and,
Okay.
yep, just let me know when you need me to move it.
All right, and I'll start on slide 3. And again, I'm Chris Lehman. I was the engagement partner on this group audit. This is our first year of our firm doing this financial statement audit. What I'll do is kind of walk through the results of the audit at a high level, walk through the year-end numbers. If there's any questions, just feel free to ask or if you need to elaborate on items. But I'll keep it fairly high level for perspective of your time. If you look at page 3, we've completed an audit for the June 30, 2022 financial statements, which is the scope of services we were engaged to complete. We're also available for year-round consultation on any accounting matters that you'd like to discuss. That's at no additional charge, because we feel like if there's issues that we need to address, it's better to do that when it's fresh in your mind and not feel like you have to do all this. If you look at slide 4, this is a high-level summary of the results of the audit. We're planning to issue a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That would be the best opinion we can give under professional standards. And that says that the financial statements are reasonably free of error. We've also discovered no material weaknesses in the internal controls. I have a couple of slides coming up that will walk through the results of the control environment, as well as the significant processes that are anticipated. We did not discover any instances of fraud. A financial statement audit is not a forensic audit, but we are required to have a healthy skepticism that fraud could be perpetrated.
Give me an example of material weakness.
That would be if there is a error in the financial statements that was considered material, that would not be discovered by management, or they would not discover that error in time. So for example, if they had the bank, let's just say the bank reconciliation didn't reconcile, but they had not discovered that, and then we came into auditors, saw that there was an error in the bank rec, that the management had not caught, that would be an example. Or they audit, say 6 months later, you would say, catching a bank error, you should do quicker than 6 months. Then lastly, on the slide, we've received the full cooperation of management. So any questions that we had, records that we requested, and Tony was very patient with us in our first year for the audit. And they're reviewing all the historical agreements that led up to it. Now, there were all, I think, 2022, a lot of historical agreements that we still looked at, that we had to kind of catch up and from the organization. So year 1 always kind of feels like the most detailed. We have to like understand everything when we do that audit. And if you look at slide 6, as part of our audit, I'll walk through the significant functions that impact the financial statements in a couple slides here. But we also consider that the environment that the entity operates in. We consider 5 interrelated components. That's the control environment. That's how management assesses risk with the organization as it relates to the financial statements. That's the control activities, such as doing bank reconciliations, doing budgets to actuals, approving disbursements and having those items supported. We also consider the information and communication and the monitoring of the controls through the audit. We concluded that the environment was effective for this period of time. And then starting on slide 7, and it'll go through slide 8 as well. You'll see what we consider the key processes here listed to the left. And then the results of that testing, pretty much green is a good sign. Green means that we, didn't think that there was any issues with the design of the process. And then 2 is whether or not we had positive results. So we're looking at how the design of the control is intended to operate, and then did that control operate as functions. So for example, you could say that you do bank reconciliations, you do them, but if you didn't catch the error, the intention was good, but the result was good. If you intended to do a bank reconciliation and it was done and it worked, then you would say the design is proper and the results are proper. So if you look to the left, looking at really treasury with the bank, bank reconciliations, there are also a couple of CD accounts, and making sure those are reported properly, reconciled on a timely basis. Looking at not very many significant estimates within the financial statements, but if you look at, there are some capital assets where you calculate depreciation expense, given an assumption of what those useful lives are. If there is any potential collectability issues on receivables and you book an allowance, that could be an example of an estimate, but really these financial statements do not have a ton of estimates within them. They're looking at the financial reporting process. You know, I would say, looking at how quickly the organization closed the books for the fiscal year end and the accuracy and preparedness for the audit, we've also concluded that the financial reporting process is functioning during the audit period. And then lastly, on slide 8, looking at disbursements, expenditures both from a payroll and I call it non-payroll, but those are regular expenses and vendors and things of that nature. And then looking at revenue and making sure that revenue recognition is proper. Not a lot of cash receipts come in for this year, but that's looking at how those are captured and properly reported in financial statements. So the key here is that we've had no issues in looking at any. Okay, and then slide 9 and 10, I pulled a summary of the comparative financial statements year over year. That way you can see a little bit of trend. As well in your financial statements that we issue a single year financial statement. That's for fiscal year 2022. But in the management discussion analysis section that's written by Tony, that is required to be comparative year over year. So when you look at that front section of the financial statements, it will display both of these years with explanation for reasons for the changes. And because the organization follows GASB, basically that's governmental accounting, and it has a crazy way of working. There's essentially a general fund of the organization as well as what's termed governmental activities. The key difference is in the general fund, that does not account for your capital assets, your long-term assets, nor any of your long-term liabilities. So that's more on I hate saying cash basis, it's not completely cash basis, but close to the cash basis is your general fund. And then your governmental activities is the perspective of the organization, including all assets and liabilities. As if the organization was a private business, you report all of their capital assets, all long-term assets, as well as any long-term liabilities. And if you look just year over year, the fund balance of the organization for the general fund increased. The fund balance back in 2021 was just over 914,000, compared to just over 1,084,000 for the year, with assets at just over 1.1 million. That's primarily your cash and CDs, so it's a very liquid balance sheet. And then there's a small portion of liabilities and deferred inflows. That's primarily your accounts payable, as well as some grant receivables that just weren't collected within 60 days of year end. Now you'll see these assets and liabilities have decreased from the prior year. I think there was more activity in 2021 related to some of the ESCO. There was more ESCO activity added in 2021. So there's a fairly substantial receivable and payable. And of course, you guys wait to collect the cash before you validate those payables. So that's why you see the numbers look a little inflated from 2021. A little bit of ESCO activity at the end of 2022. I think that was roughly about $30,000 of ESCO activity at the end of 2022. And then from a governmental activities perspective, you'll see total assets decrease from 5.5 million down to 3.5 million. Now, the reason for the assets being larger than on your general fund is the land value of the fixed assets get captured into the governmental activities column. In addition, there's a transfer of land, roughly 440 acres, was transferred during 2022. So that's no longer owned by the organization. So that piece of land had been written off as a proportional value of the original, I think, 11 and 20.
1185.
1185, right?
That's.
1185, 445, calculated. So the land value's down, you'll see that down in net position category that's split out separately, so you can see the land by itself went from 3.5 million down to 2.2. There's some other fixed assets that account for the 186 down to 151. And then the remaining net position, which is everything not tied to the land or the capital asset, is $1 million. So even on a government activity basis, if you're excluding land and capital assets, the net position of the organization improved from 869,000 up to $1 million. I'm going into too much detail. Just tell me if- I had one word, like, I was talking like, we got it. Okay, sorry. And then if you look at page 10, so page 10 basically represents what I'll call the income statement. For both the general fund and the governmental activities. And you'll see, for the general fund, there's a positive change in fund balance, those for 2021. There's a larger increase in 2022 in the fund balance of just over $169,000. Compared to 2021, that was $97,000. And again, why these numbers look more inflated in 2021 was the ESCO grant money and the spending of that grant funds, pretty much a dollar match funds. The ESCO grant in 2021 was $1.3 million of activity, compared to about $114,000 in 2022. So that just kind of gives you, if you were to back out ESCO 2021, the numbers was from a revenue and expenditure standpoint, just that federal funding has to be financial. So federal funding can give you odd blips and variations year over year. But I think the key takeaway from that funding is it doesn't impact your fund balance because it's kind of in and out from a revenue perspective. And then on the governmental activities, the main difference here is that one is back in 2021, there were some donated assets that happened then. But in addition, the land that was transferred during 2022 basically becomes a write-off of that land value on the balance sheet. So that expense number you'll see is 1.2 million, which 1.3 million of that represents the reduction of the land, 440 acres. So that is required to be shown, even though it's not a normal operating expense from the GASB definition perspective, it still has to be included in the expense line. And that's also been discussed in the MD&A section as well as the latest financial statements. So you can see why that why there is a negative change in that position. If you look, there's a negative change in that position of about 1.2 million. If that land transfer hadn't happened, that would have led to a gain of roughly $100,000. Are there any questions on the numbers? Okay. The last few slides here, I'm not going to read through all of these to you. This includes firm or industry required communications, and some of the items I talked to at the front where I said we didn't have any material weaknesses, we didn't note any fraud. If there's anything of a negative nature, I need to bring to your attention through the audit. If we had disagreements with management on accounting treatment, or if we had proposed a journal entry and management refused to book those items, things of that nature, I'd be required to bring to the board's attention. And there's nothing in any of these points where I'd say it's a red flag or anything of a negative nature that I need to bring to your attention through the audit process. And then last part of the presentation, I did include my contact information in here, and then Tony knows how to reach me, but I also make myself available to anyone on the board. If you have any concerns throughout the year that you'd like to be bring to my attention, or be if I could be of any service in answering questions or anything, that comes up during the year. So it would have been page 15, I don't think I numbered it, but, you'll see that, information in here. And then behind that, I did include the draft of the financial statements, which I won't walk through in detail, given that I kind of highlighted the numbers already. I pulled the numbers, here that we just talked through. So like I said, we are planning to issue a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. The opinion looks a little different this year because there's a new accounting standard that requires some kind of rewording of how the opinion is structured. So if you were to compare this to your previous opinions, it'll be in a different order, but it's saying more or less the same thing. But to be gainfully employed, AICPA has to keep changing the rules. So we have some more things we can follow. If standards don't change, it's too easy.
Let's go to this. Schooling and the lawyer thing.
Exactly. Keep making it difficult so no one can follow. But unless there's anything that you want to walk specifically through the statements, the front section is where Tony's written management discussion and analysis that talks about the reason for changes. Then there's the basic financial statements, which I have walked through, that's your balance sheet and your income statement, for lack of a better term. And there's notes to the financial statement, and then management's also included a budget in the back of the financial statement. And then the only other comment I'll make is, last year, the organization was subject to a single audit, which is a federal compliance audit that's required when there's federal funding expended more than $750,000 for the year, which happened last year with the ESCA grant. But this year, since the funding was under $750,000, that did not trigger the single audit requirement. So this is something we may want to keep an eye on going forward, that if that, I thought you were kind of winding down, it's ramped up for some reason. And yeah, you just never know. So if you hit 7, we'll do a single audit involved, but you will notice that there comes some last year's report that it did include the audit. So it wasn't a lack of looks. You didn't do it. You're just not subject. All right, well, I went kind of fast.
Okay, question?
On the last point, page 27, you had a brief discussion about variances for our budget. And we had an unfavorable variance with respect to professional services, which in my mind is offset by a favorable variance in salaries and related expenses. And we had some expenses that were previously incurring in the salaries category, which we are now incurring in professional services. And I would just say, I think that's really the explanation for the variance. And it at least in my mind, doesn't have as much to do with how we're recognizing revenue, which is sort of what the explanation is. So, unless I'm misunderstanding what I'm looking at, I think that's what's going on.
And I think maybe what happened to us, there could be a piece of the ESCO funding.
Right, so,
that's included in there.
and yeah, Chris and I have talked about this on Friday with the, with salaries and related expenses. Because those are costs that we're paying, we had included in last year's budget a footnote for expected revenues from the ESCA that would reimburse those costs. But because professional services are dollar in, dollar out, they're completely covered by the ESCA. We didn't account for any professional services costs in our budget. So our general funds in professional services were actually only about $75,000. So half of that funding, the 150, is actually for ESCA services, which were covered completely by the ESCA funding that we received.
So we have that again, this year's budget.
Well, we've always tracked it by class. When we do our reports monthly, we track it by class. You see general funds versus ESCA funds. And I think when the reports were ran, it was just run as one report and get the total for both, yeah.
What I would say is that because for budgetary reasons, you don't have to follow the gap.
Mhm.
We could exclude the funding from the budget and then not have to explain it. But that's up to you. I was trying to follow how it was done. Like
Because
right
we
now,
don't adopt an
right
escalate.
now.
Mhm.
Like, you don't budget estimate, so we could.
Or is there, can you put up,
We could
I don't
put
know,
out
a footnote
or
or?
we. Like just the actual numbers. don't-
We budgeted for our operating.
Yeah.
Revenues and expenses, and anything that comes through on any grant, including ESCO. You know,
Do you, I can eliminate the effect. That's.
that's how we prepared.
Mhm. And I sent you the spreadsheet, the budget.
Yeah, I
actually.
know.
Okay,
I just want to make sure I do what you want.
right,
So that is true. Now, with the eliminating the effect of ESCO, that will put you on your budget.
Mhm.
It's gonna be
But
favorable
which
budget.
makes sense with what we talked about all year now, correct?
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Good.
Any questions for Mr. Lehman? Appreciate your report, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, with that amendment, I'll recommend we send it on.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the audit. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mario. Any additional questions or comments? All in favor, raise your right hand, please. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
I mean, I'll keep on. Yeah, we'll get, are you sure? Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Committee reports, Stone School, Mr. Brady.
Tome School, I'm turning it all over to Tony, who has done yeoman's work over the last, additional yeoman's work over the last 30 days.
I had reached out to Joe in advance of the meeting and asked if he would mind if I would give the report today, just to go over and kind of remind the board members of what we've gone through in the past year or so, trying to get the work down at Tome School with the headmaster's house. Following the fires that we had during COVID, we had an updated assessment, which was in conjunction with MHT. We asked for some proposals, some contractor proposals based off of those recommendations of which buildings could be stabilized, which should be deconstructed, and then the demolition of the master's cottages. We worked with MHT and Fred Ward Associates and Highmark Builders on that through 2021. The Tome School reviewed those proposals and pulled out the specific task for headmaster's house of trying to repair the roof, seal off the roof so that it would prevent any further weather deterioration. That proposal was received in late 2021. It was submitted to MHT for the project review. It was submitted to DPS for the contract review under the grant. And we received those approvals in January, which is when we went back to the contractor and asked, you know, pricing is volatile. Most contractors aren't honoring a proposal for more than 14 or so days. And I just asked if they would confirm the price or give me a revised proposal. And unfortunately, since January, we have not received that proposal. It's been a number of unfortunate delays, to which they will not honor the original proposal at all. And Jen and I met with them last week to discuss the scope again. And their request was another assessment of just the building. We had, if you remember, they had asked us to clear the back of the building over in May or so they could have a lift come in, someone could get up on the roof to check the conditions, which as a board, we felt was understanding. We had the clearing work done. It was completed in June. We still didn't get a proposal, so that Jen and I were after a lot of back and forth on scheduling. We met with them last week and they submitted a proposal for $10,000 to do an updated assessment, to which I spoke internally with some folks and Joe, and we were very unhappy with that outcome. That we've already gone through proposals and assessments and to spend that much money on just giving us a pricing for one project seemed a bit unnecessary. I did speak with Joe about some recommended contractors. We will have a contractor out this week to review and provide some pricing. Joe's given me some information on someone that I can reach out to provide pricing. So if any board members have any recommendations of a contractor, a roofer, anyone that would potentially be interested in providing a pricing proposal. At this point, the scope is approved by MHT. We would have to get a new contractor approval by DGS, but that's something that I think we could get within 30 days if we ask them for a quick review, especially if the scope's not changing. But ultimately, I do not think that is the responsible cost for when we've got limited grant funds that we're trying to utilize for the project.
The action questions for Tony? Tony, is there anything on the headmaster's house that could be done as an interim at a much lower, just to mitigate any problems like the roof or anything?
Well, that's something Joe and I were talking about, and we felt like just securing the roof with some sort of waterproof membrane, and if there needed to be some minimal stabilization or reinforcement, that would get us where we need to be. We're not talking about completely replacing the roof, just sealing it off. And then Brian came out on site, we have a company maintenance contractor, he gave me a mason's contact to come out and see about blocking up the first floor. We are trying to hit it and get this work done.
Comments, questions? So, you have any thought of a timeline?
I hope that, what's today, the 19th? I hope next board meeting, I have proposals for the board to approve.
Okay, thank you. Environmental committee, Marion?
All right. Well, you're almost done again.
Oh,
Different thing.
Chick almost sold a thunder. Next thing that's the building pay. But, yeah, I'm not been chatting over the last, several years. But more importantly, over the last couple of weeks, yeah, we're almost there, and we're actually thinking it might be done by the end of this month. And then prepare a summary report, which will give an MVP. Pictures. We have pictures. I get to see the pictures, so.
I just got it today. I was excited that they said it.
So in short, we're almost done with that. Landfill monitoring, and then I apologize if it's engineering report. Since we're not printing stuff off, I didn't get it to you, that's my fault. I did do. Landfill monitoring is the same as it always is, we're still going. As happened, so that's, those is the good news. Solar opportunities, I actually have done some internet research, I have not told the committee. You know, sorry. We will do it. But I did put together, and I was actually going to present it to everybody. But I can email instead. I did put together a draft Western press here, so we can start shooting at something internally, and then and I put a deadline pretty far out. If we're gonna need some time to put some kind of document together, we're probably gonna want some kind of expression meeting where we'd be on site, we take it to the places where something could happen. And by the way, I didn't make it solar, I made it alternative energy. Yeah, it's more flexible. See, somebody made the idea of going to window. I didn't want to live it up to just solar. So I brought it out a little bit. It's pretty short, it's pretty simple, I'm sharing with the group. And then I put a date of like June or receiving. I think whatever we do, we give them in several months to do whatever research they have to do, especially from there's a lot of calculations that they're gonna want to do this time, but automatically like that.
They'll probably wanna review all the landfill information and the caps, that they need to confirm with MDE.
But I don't, I mean, the way I also wrote it is I wrote it as lands under Bainbridge Development Corporation.
Okay,
So not necessarily.
Yeah.
So I'll share what you got,
yes.
you have it. Your agenda. So-
Mary, on the alternative energy. How do we do references and so forth for other projects? Because there are a lot of, in this case, solar farms and alternative energy out there, in Cecil Canyon and other places. How do we do reference checks on people to ensure that there are companies that we want to consider?
That's part of what the president will be asking for references, and we're gonna have to do those all.
The project reference.
I think we're gonna ask for sample projects in
Mhm.
the region.
Mhm.
Certainly, I think if it's, you know,
Okay.
some other part of the country like California.
Where you're
we're probably
completely different regulations, yeah, I
Same
think,
or not, but certainly.
Questions for Mario, environmental report?
I have a quick question. Mara, you think that MEA can review some of the people that you are looking at for the solar? And I mean, maybe they can give you a little reference, at least give you some thought.
100% agree with you on that, because I know I'm not that smart on it, so
Okay.
smart enough to know I'm dumb enough on it.
Thank you, Bridget.
Well, I'll make sure you have, I have a good connection with Eric Kaufman with MEA and he helps me out on other projects. So if you need it, just let me know. I'll get you introduced.
Awesome, thank you much, and maybe they have ideas of expressions of interest, maybe mine's too.
Okay.
I stole it from the internet. so.
Okay.
Other comments or questions for Mario? Okay, thank you, Mario. Appreciate your work and congratulations on the, thank you.
Congratulate all of them.
What if we take that off your agenda? Yeah.
We're gonna have a next board meeting later.
yeah.
There you go. That's a good idea. Okay, we have the executive director's report. There's 5 items. Tony, you're on.
For phase one, I'm working with Weston and MRP to finalize the land use covenants on the parcels. We have, because they're separated parcels for each building, because they'll have different tenants. We've got several different land use controls, and you have to make sure all the deed information is correct. We did some modifications on the parcel D land use covenant, because that is where the current disposal area is being utilized. And we were going back and forth with MD trying to determine how they wanted us to survey that area. We have an allocated acreage. We have not used that full allocation, so MD was doing some internal reviews to determine if they wanted us to survey and restrict that entire parcel versus if we're only using 2 of the 3 or 2 of the 6 acres, do we survey just that small amount? And then if we end up finding more material, we have found more material twice since we started those land use covenants. So we decided everyone together that it would be best to survey the entire area. And in the closure report, we can have, if we have not utilized that full acreage, we can include a map and an updated survey that shows what amount was used. But this way, the land use covenants can be finalized. We don't have to go back and have all of the holders to review everything. We did let NDE know that BDC did not want to be a holder of those land use covenants and in a chain of responsibility. The Navy is reviewing that, if they would like to be a holder as well. In terms of site work, we have not started work on grading parcel D yet. The NOI was required to be published and there were some modifications with plans. That was published last week, so they're hoping to start work in the next 2 weeks because it has to have a 14-day publication. The road that that goes by building B, the one in the center, that goes by where the old, or where the reservoir is, that was paved this weekend. They've started to put in curbs, so it's starting to look like an actual site out there, which is pretty cool. I met with MRP and Vicky over at the marketing center to just discuss some updates on construction scheduling. confirm all of the ordinances, confirm all of the details with the construction team in terms of the terms of their permit, the policies of the town. And to date, we have responded to 9 incidences in phase 1. We had 4 unknown USTs. None of them were contaminated, so that's a good thing, but still an issue for mass breaking. We have discovered 3 ACM burial pits, which we found our soldiers' meal equipment. Oh, yes, you were correct. So 4 underground storage tanks were found. None of them had any contamination. When they're removed, they do require to have MD on site and do confirmation sampling to make sure there's no contamination in the soil. We uncovered 3 ACM pits, which is asbestos containing materials. So there's typically it's transite panels, but we found everything from beer bottles to toilets. All of the materials been excavated. We logged the amount of cubic yards and then we charged that against the ESCA. There was 1 foundation that was uncovered. There was an oily looking material, which ended up just being standard oil. That was a contamination issue. And we found 1 abandoned well. The total costs to date have been right around $700,000 to address those items. And I have provided an update to NDE and the Navy so they are aware in terms of when we project for our phase 2, it is smart for us to keep that on the higher end like we did for phase 1. We currently have $1.4 million left in the budget. But if you remember, we modified that to be able to allow us to do work outside of phase 1. And so utilize that obligated funding when we are ready to do so.
Tony, would you remind the board, when the contractor uncovers something and it's reported, take us through the process to actually get the work done and pay the bill.
So the general contractor is Conlin, the site contractor is DXI. If DXI hits any ACM material, a tank, if they see anything of concern, they call Jeremy, who's the superintendent for Conlin. Jeremy calls me. I then speak with Rich at Weston, who's our environmental oversight. Depending on if it is a burial pit, Jay at Weston calls Newberg, who is their asbestos team. If it is an underground storage tank, he calls Coventry Environmental, and there's a 24-hour response time. We had someone on site within 24 hours of discovery to at least assess the situation, figure out what is uncovered. We have approved emergency response for the USTs, because those for a standard contractor, they can take up to 60 days to respond. And we certainly don't have 60 days to wait on mass grading. When there is a response action on site, Weston is on site every day taking reports on the daily logs. And then they pay any subcontractors. It's included on their invoice because Weston is an approved ESCA contractor. I receive the invoices, I submit the request to the Navy, once the funding comes through, Weston is paid, we pay the contract.
Any question on the process? Mary,
How close is it to our those payments happening?
They're happening within 45 days.
Good.
Mhm.
the materials disposed where?
Anything, the underground storage tanks are required to be taken off site. The ACM, any burial material goes into the disposable area that's on parcel D. There are other areas allocated. If we exceed that, there were up to 6 allocated in the first. But if you find bulk material, for example, when we did the surface scan, we found bulk piping on the ground somewhere. Anything that's intact cannot be buried on site. It's considered solid waste, so that has to be taken off. But anything that's found in the soil that's broken down or was previously existing there, is allowed to go in the burial pit. And MDE receives all the report logs as well.
Adding on to the very good question. Who's gonna ultimately own the parcel?
MRP. MRP owns parcel D. So they are the holder of the land use covenants. Oh, yes, not PC.
This is all, remember, this is a phase 1 report.
Yes, just phase 1.
It's not long.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just.
Okay, good. I'm glad you
Gotta
clarified.
be at the very good question.
Other questions on phase 1? Thank you, Tony. Phase 2.
For phase 2, the sediment and erosion plans were approved by the county. Those are required for the final activity-based sampling that is being handled. One of the issues with the first round of activity-based sampling was the conditions weren't dry enough, and if everyone is aware of the weather low recently, we've not had a lot of dry stretches of weather, so we haven't hit the threshold. They were planning to start that sampling September 12th, and didn't hit their threshold for how dry it is, so as soon as they hit the threshold for what they need for in terms of climate, then they will handle its some mowing and some minimal clearing and excavation.
Steve, I was just gonna clarify, Tony's comment that 7 erosion controls are just for the activity based.
Yep, that's what activity.
Not by any means on the scale of site.
Right, it's basically because they were, I think it's larger than 2 acres, I think it's the threshold in the county. They have to have at least minimal sediment and erosion controls, like perimeter fencing, to make sure that nothing's gonna, especially with the topography in phase 2, we're just slowly going downhill, so we wanna make sure nothing, any runoff basically.
Anything else? Phase 2? Infrastructure.
For infrastructure, there isn't a whole lot of updated terms of, and sewer or dry utilities, which are gas and electric. The development team, both MRP and NCPM, are working with Artesian on an updated allocation letter from the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. And because we are a large proponent of who's going to be using that water, they wanted some understanding for overall projected water needs at full build out of Bainbridge. Not anything super detailed, but if Artesian goes for an increase in their allocation, they have to have justification for that increase. And I also met with Pastor Phillips from Pleasantville. Yes, they are interested in accessing some public utilities for water and gas. So I met with him and some folks from his staff, put them in touch with who ultimately they could work with them, Artesian and PG&E. They also expressed interest in a cell phone tower. I assured him it's not just them that have bad cell phone service. It's all of us that don't get great service. That is something that MRP was looking into. Typically, who owns the cell phone tower, they see a need in an area. They lease a piece of land, and then the cell phone companies pay to have their equipment on that tower. That's where they get their money from. Apparently requesting the tower, which they were doing pretty early on in the acquisition of the land, is not standard, and they couldn't find anyone interested in leasing a portion or locating a tower right now, because there's not enough need. But they do expect once tenants start to come in, that there will likely be a need for the increase. So I let Pastor Phillips know, if we get a tower, we will let them in.
People do not know Pastor Phillips. He is very aggressive, enthusiastic individual. I say that. So
Yes.
Tony is very passionate about this. When I was way back in my old life, I dealt with him when I was in education. Anyway, I gotta tell this story. Because we were expecting Bainbridge to take off 3 years ago, I think it was before COVID. So we scheduled an appointment to go over to see Reverend Phillips over at Pleasantview. And we went over and sat down with him, and we said, we want to be good neighbors, we want to explain to you what's going on. You're going to see some vehicle traffic and so forth. And he was very patient for about 35 minutes. Very patient. He had his business manager with him. And he said, when can I hook up the utilities? And I said, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but I'm sure the utility companies would be interested in you hooking up. Okay, in that time.
And they've been
Good neighbor.
yes, wonderful. When we had the groundbreaking ceremony, they allowed us to use their parking. So they've been a good team.
Tony, excuse me, Vicki, were you aware of the Artesian effort to increase the withdrawal? That's why we're talking.
The last one, we did, yes. Are they doing another one?
Yeah.
They're gonna be, I think they're gonna be updating the one.
Well, we need to make sure. that-
I believe their request is going in September. So they just like to have a letter of support around the time of the request.
Security.
We had some issues over the summer with folks getting into the site, and I mean, Now, what we, no one really wants to put in our office, but unfortunately, some of the subcontractor trailers were broken into and some tools were stolen. So cameras were installed, Jeremy had some cameras installed to make sure that their areas were covered. We haven't had any issues since then. We'll discuss the Tone School security, in a little bit later, but standard overall security hasn't necessarily been an issue. We will be, updating on reinstalling the fence along 276 with the water line extension. Out at our house.
Questions on security? SB 541.
The next advisory meeting will be this Thursday on site at Baybridge. We'll be meeting over in the marketing center, doing a quick welcome introductions. We'll take everyone out on site at Tone School, get a campus tour, discuss some of the plans, kind of break down where the assessments came in at, come back, have the meeting discussion, and then lunch will be provided for those who would like to stay with a local gentleman down at Fort. John, is it Johnny? Actually, so I've been working with the secretary's office. That's what she did.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes, we have no old business today. We have some new business. And under the phase 2/1A infrastructure, Jen's gonna put it up on the screen. What we're gonna be asking for at the end of this presentation is a concept approval from the board. With that approval, Tony can participate. We're a partner with Cecil County government on a $7.5 million grant. And we are joint recipients of that. So BDC, Tony's operating as our agent, and then someone from Cecil County government will be operating as theirs. And in order for the BDC to move forward on this, we need the board to approve a concept. I want to emphasize, and I'll probably say this again. You're going to see, it's on the screen now, where the yellow dotted line, that's a road. That dark green, I'll call it dark green area, right there, is part of phase 2. Phase 2 is all of the land in phase 2 belongs to the BDC. Okay, and we are in conversations, negotiations with Mr. Michael and his team on regarding redoing the development agreement. And we have stated that we will not move forward with approving any plans by the BDC. Remember, the board has to approve those plans until we have a new agreement, a new development agreement. What we're going to talk to you today is an exception, a concept exception, which is totally focused on only the road aspect. Now, if I didn't mess it up, Tony, tell people what they're looking for.
You did not mess it up, Paul. Jen, will you zoom in just a little bit so we can see? So the yellow hash line is the proposed road extension. For any board members that have been around for a long, long time, you will probably remember that there was the initial discussion of expanding access off Diamond Gym Road. And that would be for, I think there was the employment center was originally over in that area. But so in this year's capital, the miscellaneous grant. Yes, in this year's state capital budget, there was $7.5 million allocated to co-grantees, the Bainbridge Development Corporation and Cecil County for public road infrastructure. So the off-site portion of Diamond Gym, which is, it's hard to tell, but it's actually orange to the right of our property, that would be owned by the county. And then the public or the on-site aspect would be owned by the town, which is who will be deeded the other roads that are on site. So where it extends. So right now, the proposal is that the road would end right here. Screen. The road would end right here in a cul-de-sac, but we come down here, this would be owned by the county, and then we would connect through this acreage, which is about 34 acres. We think this is about 134 acres. And then it would connect into phase one, which is why it's been named phase 1A, because although it is in the phase 2 land, it will service the phase 1A development. And then whatever ultimately would be over in that acreage. We're working with the county on the application, which is why they needed to come before the board, because we cannot submit an application for grant funding without the board's approval of the project. And one of the reasons why we hadn't talked about this topic earlier was we've never had a grant award that also named another entity. And we weren't exactly sure how that process was going to work, if it was going to be 2 separate agreements, if there is a combined agreement. So we were able to get a meeting between CDC, MRP, and the county first to make sure we all understand that this is what we expect this funding would be used for this road extension. And then we had follow-up discussions with the Department of General Services to ensure that we understand how does this process work when you have 2 co-grantees. There would be 1 grant agreement. Both Cecil County and VDC would be named in the grant agreement. You can have MRP named as a beneficiary, and certain protections and responsibilities applies within that aspect. But everything would needed to be handled jointly between VDC and Cecil County. We expect the process will be the exact same as what we've been working thus far with the grants that we have. We had the original $2 million grants, and then the subsequent $1.5 million grants, which are being used for the other public road systems in phase 1. MRP as the beneficiary, because they're the landowner, has been the holder of those contracts. But VDC as the grantee reviews all of the draw packages, reviews all of the invoices, and receives all of those, all of the paperwork in that regard. We would be responsible for the final report. You don't have to do any progress reports during the grant. The only time you have to do something like that is if you fall outside of your grant timeline, which it's 7 years. So there's no issue with that. But we had discussed because this is a large amount of funding, prevailing wage and certain things will kick in just because of the fact that it's over $5 million. So we discussed preliminarily, Steve Overbay participated in the discussion with DGS. And we brought up the idea of potentially we could have a third-party accountant overseeing everything for verification, just to make sure that any of those require, I'm not an expert on prevailing wage. So if we wanted an added level of security, although BC would be looking at everything and Cecil County will be looking at everything, would we be interested in potentially having a third party accountant oversee everything? That would be charged against the grant funding, so it wouldn't be a cost to BC and it wouldn't be a cost to Cecil County. As Pearl mentioned, this is a conceptual layout. MRP will be handling all the engineering with Bowler and GW Stevens, but part of that engineering is included in that grant scope. So they're not going to start fully engineering everything. They are conceptually planning, but fully engineering everything to provide a final site plan and layout until they actually are within the terms of the grant and can allocate all of those expenses under the grant, which is why this is just a conceptual road layout, not final layout, not site plan or anything.
Before I make any comments, I'm gonna do a check. Questions, comments? Dr. Rudolph.
This conceptual drawing. Does that dictate now what type of road we're putting in there in regards to what traffic we own that road? That we decided to.
No.
Trailers will not be able to use the road through our property, or will be?
No, there'd be a permit, there's no restriction on that road that would not allow tractor trailers to come in
So
from
really,
that.
we're providing a new
exit entrance to the property, to our property. Tractor trailers.
Potentially tractor trailers, yes.
And down Chin Road is not built to accommodate tractor trailers.
It's a full, it would be an expansion of
Or
the,
that's 7 million. So would this be subject to public
I-
discussion?
yes, absolutely.
Because we don't have tractor trailers now, on 4 Bainbridge Elementary School.
Actually,
It wouldn't actually go
I know.
to the elementary school, but yes, it would be a full road expansion. You would be permitting a completely new road, so there would be a very large public. All the permitting would have public hearing.
If you're afraid to, you don't want traffic trailers on our property, because we don't know what our property would be. The decision would be to not support the conceptual plan this evening, or to support the conception, and what are we, well, if I don't want a tractor trailer going to our property, but at least don't want to make a decision. What do we?
what we're doing is, if we approve the concept, we are allowing engineering work. They're allowing us to do that with the county to apply for the $7.5 million grant, which would include engineering. I just want to point out to everyone, can they see me there?
I don't know.
Okay, this is Diamond Jim Road. Dr. Rudolph talked about that. This is Bainbridge Elementary right here.
Mhm.
So Dr. Rudolph's right, it would go right by.
The road would be moved further north, and there would be a path to turn right for entrance into Bainbridge, and there would be a path to turn left for school buses, which there are only 6 school buses that actually utilize that. They had to do an inquiry on that. But,
Yeah, the
this
people
is,
at home can see that,
yes,
right?
and this is, this road concept was included in the general development plan, and it is MRP accessing their right for access under the reciprocal easement access agreement that we have with MRP and TPM for their phase 1, and obviously future, there will be building.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but no, we can't see any of this.
Your screen hasn't been shared.
Okay, sorry, let me,
I'm sorry, Matt.
Thank you for saying something, Matt.
this one. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, I'm sorry, you see the yellow and orange dotted line
You can.
Yep.
outside the red border is Diamond Jim Road. That's the county road right now. And then when you come across, you can't see it, but Craigtown Road runs right on our border. And then when you cross Craigtown Road, that dark green area outlined by red, dark red, that's all PVC property phase 2.
And the anticipation is that we would have the same process of property acquisition in that area before any infrastructure is actually installed.
Okay, I want to check with Jim, Matt, and Joe. Do you have any questions on, since I apologize if you didn't see it before? Now that you've seen it, do you have any questions regarding the discussion?
I was following along pretty well, just with my, understanding of the property and, Diamond Jim Road. However, forgive me if I missed this part, but you said this area here is phase 2. Are we looking at 3 phases then?
Well, what you brought up has been a lot of discussion with the executive committee, who is currently discussing the redevelopment agreement, redoing the development agreement with MTPM. And the discussion is we, first of all, the executive committee cannot approve any development plan. That's the board. So the board, I hope you already do, but you should have full confidence is the executive committee can't agree to anything. We can accept a proposal, then we have to bring the proposal to you for adoption, just like we did on phase one with the 440 acres. And with that, what this is about, we've had a lot of discussions about this because the paranoia in me, 1A is a smoke screen. It's phase two. This road is going through phase two, except for a minor part of it that goes through phase one and with it. So we agreed to bring up the discussion tonight for the purpose of partnering with the county to seek the grants, $7.5 million grant that we, this is the language we came up with, is we would approve a concept of a road, period. Nothing else,
Right.
But
nothing else.
Carl, and let me do this, and forgive me if I didn't mean to put you on the spot or suggest that I
Okay.
didn't agree with it. But I guess what I'm saying here is if we have an opportunity to partner with the county to find financing for such a project, I think I've made it clear that one of my largest concerns is the intersection where 274 and what is that? 222, 230, forgive me, I know these things is different.
275.
27, yeah. My biggest concern there is ingress and egress. If we can find an opportunity to utilize our rights to Diamond Gym Road to give a second ingress egress, whether that's to be to trucks or drivers or that kind of thing, I think we have to aggressively take a look and research that option.
Matt, it would have to be part of the engineering.
Mhm.
They would have to, obviously, with the engineering, they would have to develop a plan that would allow for exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I guess I'm sharing with you my full support on that.
I hear
Hey, Carl.
you. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, my only concern is that if we do this, how, it's going kind of, we're kind of cutting into a lot of land that can be developed there. Well, I just wanted to know if we studied the fact that, will that hamper us or will it help us?
The position of the road was placed to provide maximum floor space for our future building. It's been Ken and GW Stevens and MRP, this might be the fourth or fifth conceptual layout. And this is what everyone agreed would provide the maximum space in that area south of the road, for a larger building footprint.
Yeah,
Get paid on floor area or on acreage?
Ken typically sells on floor area. If for phase one, he's sold on floor area. And ultimately, MRP is very heavily engaged on this. So they wanted to maximize the size of the building that they could potentially fit.
We want to maximize it as well. Okay.
I would just say for everybody, there, on the right-hand side, our property, there's a double red line going down the middle. Double red line, that's where the gas and utilities go. The major overhead transmission and the gas line go through there. And in talking with the town of Fort Deposit and Vicky over the years, there is not a plan to construct on the east side of that power line in that property. It's a, with that property is currently not annexed into the town of Fort Deposit. I think the town of Fort Deposit is going to be developed, is going to be annexed. And we would be obligated, first of all, I agree with Fort Deposit. Second of all, we would certainly do that if plans come to development.
Right, we've let Ken know, it's been a discussion with Ken that if that 34 acres ends up being forest conservation, that the town found no need for us to take the time and money and resources to annex it. If that could be a small commercial footprint or something, then it would be annexed into the town. So Ken's aware of that to keep us keep us abreast of his plan so we can make sure if it does need to be annexed, we can get that him. In a timely fashion.
Yes, Dave.
Ask a question.
No, I just a second. Just a second, Bob. Go ahead, Dave.
You vote for this. You are agreeing, we are agreeing to allow trucks through the property. Instead of trucks going out, what I thought, on a highway making the right hand turn. We're talking, we're not talking about 2 trucks, we're talking about 20, we're talking about 200. I mean, by doing that, by voting for this tonight, are we saying that we agree that we're allowing all the truck traffic down, Jim Road? Or are we just saying we agree to allow them to move forward, but not the detail? Are we in line to a 7? The detail never changes, so I'm just saying, what are we voting for, or can we delay this vote tonight for next month so that we can actually vote into it? Because that scares me. I don't know what the real intent here is. It our benefit, or the developer benefit, Cecil County benefit, or what? So I'm just saying, I'm really concerned about putting truck traffic out down Jim Road. We don't have to put a traffic light there, just to make it safe. And I just don't know why it's coming up this evening that we had to make a decision.
The reason why it came up is $7.5 million. But it's $7.5 million, we would say, let's. I'm just saying.
Right, the request to state for the funding was for an alternative access into the park. Because going down 222 through that area is not the favorable alternative access. It would be 275, and then we reinvigorated the discussions of 270 of the Diamond Dip Road extension. The developer, MRP, that access is also an important aspect for the marketing of phase 1, which is why it's labeled as phase 1A, even though as Carl has mentioned, the land is in phase 2, but it will service both phase 2 and phase 1 developments. That's why MRP is obviously very interested in it. They will not work on any engineering until they've got the board support of, yes, we will submit a grant application for another access point off of Diamond Gym Road, utilizing the state grant funding. The county has given their full support, but they obviously, we cannot start working on a grant package without the BDC support.
Who asked on the screen, who asked, can you make a comment? Bob Coos, did you ask?
Yes, I did. Kind of wondering something over the years, looking where Diamond Gym Road comes off of 275. Of course, my kids went to Bainbridge Elementary and I always wondered about that strange dog leg and the short double boulevard, and then a left turn that goes up to Bainbridge. Is there any way that this entrance and egress can utilize that boulevard rather than appear to parallel it? Okay, I'm looking now at the right of your screen. If we come in Diamond Gym Road, as it is now, when we come in Diamond Gym Road, and if you're going to Bainbridge, you make a left and a dog leg, right about where you are now, into that double boulevard. You go about.
Oh, okay, I know, you're talking about the old boulevard in Manor Heights. Okay.
Okay. What I'm
That's the
questioning, is there a way?
That's the purpose of the engineering, Bob. The
Okay.
purpose of the engineering is to determine, is to use the grant to come up with a plan that would have to go through a public process, permitting process, and the whole bit. But we tonight cannot say, we'd like you to put an access road here, or we'd like you to put an egress, so forth. That's part of the engineering that would take place, and people a lot smarter than me would come in and say, I'm not I'm sort of a wait and see. Let's see what they put on the table. The issue for the board tonight, there's been some good discussion, is do we agree with the concept to allow phase two to have an engineering plan to go through phase two? Okay, to support phase two and phase one or not?
I'm just kind of looking ahead here, trying to avoid the potential choppiness of paralleling that boulevard.
That road would be decommissioned. This would be the new road that's pictured. So if you're talking about the road that's currently there, that's just south of those yellow dots, that road would be decommissioned. It would be a brand new road, and you have traffic to Bainbridge to the right, and the school traffic would be to the left.
All right, so we'd eliminate that goofy little. 100
Right, it
foot.
would be a brand new road.
I just caution everybody to not be definitive of what it will be or what it won't be. That's part of an engineering plan.
Yeah, and Mayor Coos, I would sit there and suggest too that I agree with you 100%. Obviously, if none of this stuff fits, but I think we put some confidence in the engineers to sit there and say this is a much more effective and efficient way of doing this. And I think we all know, and I think you just alluded to, is that the entrance to Bainbridge is relatively hidden and dogleg here, and just really isn't great. So, yeah, again, I'll just reiterate my opinion that at least adding our name to support this study and this potential state funding is a positive thing.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And so the board is aware, funding for this specific project was requested by the county in their priority funding projects with infrastructure, but it was not awarded through that funding option. It was awarded through a miscellaneous grant, and that's why Bainbridge was paired with it, because ultimately it will go through our land, but it was a county infrastructure priority.
Does anybody, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
I want to ask a process question. So if we say tonight that conceptually we're okay with what we've seen, and we understand that it's going to, at what point is somebody going to bring back engineering results that are more definitive in terms of where the road will be located, what kind of traffic is there, and all that stuff? Are we going to get a second look or another bite at making sure we're okay, what is about to go to the property? That's the process question. I agree.
Oh, yes.
Do you have the answer?
Yes, so what we are doing now is approving a conceptual grant project for infrastructure and alternative access that we will partner with the county on. We will submit a grant package application in conjunction with the county. We will get a standard grant agreement back. We don't ever have to actually move on that project if the board would never be happy with the site plan that they received. It would have to be a completely collaborative effort between us and the county, but we can't start any of the engineering on that if we don't have the grant funds encumbered, because the developer ultimately doesn't want to spend large amounts of money in advance, not even knowing if they're going to be reimbursed for those engineering costs.
Is anybody from Cecil County government who's on the call tonight? Comment?
Say that again, Carl.
I'm saying that you're a joint recipient, not you, Danielle, but Cecil County government is a joint recipient with the BBC on this $7.5 million grant. You want to make any comments about the engineering?
Not specifically about the engineering. I think, Tony covered, we had a meeting with MRP and NII Michael, and, we're happy to move forward with that MOU.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, Dave?
The road, the yellow road would be a public road.
Both would be public roads. The orange, because it's offsite, would be owned by the county.
county, right?
One side would be owned by the town, so any of the roads on Bainbridge will ultimately be deeded over to the town once they're completed construction.
And you mentioned that the Yellow Road ends at cul-de-sac. Is the road system for phase one connected to that cul-de-sac?
It would be, yes. So the site plan that's in there right now is our phase one plan, which as that was engineered, ended at a cul-de-sac over by the additional parking between building A, the large building, and building C. So where that cul-de-sac is, it would just be an extension of that road to connect.
Cul-de-sac.
Right,
One final question. Road would then be a public road that someone can get from 275 to Home Highway. Right? They could
Yes,
drive
it would-
all the way through the property.
yes, technically.
It'll all be open property.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, is it all going to be public roads? Yes, I don't know. I can't, I don't know. MRP, if they end up ultimately being the owner. I'm sure they could, there would be signage about no through traffic. I don't know those details. Those are
I don't
far ahead.
I don't like to answer questions that speculate on the answers that we don't know the answer to. So I think we should put that question on the books and seek the answer to it through the right process, so we know what we're talking about. Mary Ellen?
Just, I hear everybody concerned, and it does look like the road is actually going to be further away from main development.
It will.
That's great news. However, we need to make sure that people can get in and out of school safely. I
Right,
think that's a message we want to send.
absolutely.
So just to get things rolling, I will make a motion that we vote in favor of the concept.
Okay, say it, man.
I move in favor of accepting this concept plan.
Okay, we have a motion by Mario. Do we have a second?
Second, it's Joe Brandt.
Joe Brandt does a second. Further discussion?
Can we, would now be the point where we want to make sure that Bainbridge Elementary School and eventual traffic flow as part of our agreement, or vote, or does that have to take a motion, or are you just going to make it as a council discussion?
I think what we would do is we would share our concerns and our questions, to and react and receive the engineering study.
So,
With that, you're still gonna have to prove it.
right, and those details, Dave, would not be included in the grant application.
I'm saying, I'm concerned what Mario said about, I'd say, we want to protect
Mhm.
school safety
Mhm.
and the entrance to Bainbridge Elementary School.
I think,
Do you make that known now or later?
I think,
I would think,
I don't think we make that, I think we can make that, later. And in the meantime, other issues, with that, okay, that we, and with that. All we're asking for is in the motion and the second, approve the concept, so Tony can join with the county to seek the $7.5 million grant. Okay,
So, and again, I don't know where we engage with this, but the financial concern here is this is a very unusual arrangement where a grant has two recipients, there's the treasurer, the interface with our auditor, etc. I'm very concerned that we make sure we have clearly delineated who's responsible for what in terms of administration of the grant, who's going to request funding, who's going to do disbursements, inspections, who's going to for our books, the county's books. And I'll do all this, I don't expect all this questions to be answered today, but before money starts flying up, we make sure we have an operating agreement that spells all that out with enough detail that we can follow.
yes. So as we establish an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the BDC, MTPM, MRP, and the Cecil County on the sewer project, we have proposed the exact same process for this project. So Reed and MRP are drafting an MOU for the board to consider that lays out those responsibilities, who is responsible for what. Ultimately, does that negate responsibilities under a recipient of a grant? No, that's why we'll still be very much involved in the process, which is not in the near future that we will have those details, but a level of comfort for all parties involved. Who's going to be responsible for what, how the relationships work, just to have that added level of security.
Does that get spelled out in the application?
No. We can put those details in the application. And if the board wants to approve the application, the board can say they want to review it and approve the application before it goes to submission to DGS. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, but the question is a good one. In applying for the grant, is there a process of accountability associated with the application?
No, a grant application is one page and you attach a scope and you attach a budget. It's extremely high level,
The grant agreement.
but the grant agreement that comes from that is very detailed.
Well, County Executive Hornberger is on the call as well, and she's heard this discussion. If this motion is approved, when the application for the grant comes back, or the application, we have some concerns regarding accountability, who's responsible, how do we monitor?
Well, it's just important to remember that won't be noted in the application. An application is just specific to the project scope and budget. That they don't, DGS doesn't approve how those relationships work, which is why you have the grant agreement. You can request specific language be in your grant agreement. It is ultimately up to the AG and DGS what they will and will not put in their agreement. And then that's also the purpose of establishing some form of MOU to have legally in writing what those responsibilities are.
And I would add to what Tony's saying. Order would be MOU first.
before
Grant
the agreement.
grant agreement. Again, no money is flowing until the grant agreement,
Right.
which has the devil in the details. And finally, the Board of Public Works has to approve this grant.
Okay,
It must go to the Board of Public Works.
so the grant agreement would include the details?
Yes, the grant agreement is very,
That was the grant agreement, come back here for approval.
absolutely,
That's
Yeah.
all, then I'll feel,
Okay,
yes.
okay, I'm always nervous with virtual. Voting board members, I love the rest of you, but Sandra, Tim, is that Lee? Joe, did you hear that response?
No,
Okay, would you say again, Steve?
Well, I was just making a clarification that the order of importance is grant application, which is a one pager. Then there's the MOU, which Tony's described, which lays out what we think of the details for Muscle County. And then thirdly, the grant agreement, which is extremely detailed on how this works, which our treasurer has pointed out is where his concerns were. Once that is reviewed and approved by this board, it then goes to the Board of Public Works. For the
Okay.
governor, treasurer, comptroller to approve.
I appreciate,
After that, money can be expended.
I appreciate the clarification. So
Right.
The grant agreement will come back to the board for approval. And then that, you could adjust, you could address Dr. Rudolph's concerns, Mr. Haynes' concerns. Any additional comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
I apologize.
You're good.
We are trying to move back, donating land.
No, it would be just as the public roads in phase one were part of that transfer. This would be the same for this acreage in phase two. It would all be encumbered by whoever the ultimate owner is, whether it's MTPM or MRP.
But I agree with you. We are saying that you can engineer on our land an infrastructure project. That's the answer. Any additional questions? Okay, the motion by Mario and the second by Joe is that we approve the concept. And this is not part of the amendment. What we've all now discussed is the agreement that must come back for approval may be, the devil will be in the details. I think I stole that language. All in favor, raise your right hand, please. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That's good discussion. But we got a little work to do on that. Okay, Tony sent you a proposal for increasing security on the Tone School site. I hope you had a chance to review it. And we are seeking approval of funding of this tonight. Tony?
So we have looked into doing a secondary expansion of the Deep Sentinel camera system in the northern part of the Tone School campus. But given the legislation, DNR, and the transfer of the property, we didn't want to go through that process of ultimately installing all that, taking all the time, getting everything programmed and all the infrastructure when the property can be transferred anytime from now till June. So James, our security contractor, gave us some different proposals. He had provided 3 different estimates on level of added security. These are not added cameras, but they would be motion detectors, like solar lights, and then sirens, bullhorns, right? You can have pre-recorded messages come over, or you could just have a siren go off. But this option that we chose is, I think it's called the mid package. There was the low package, mid package, and the high. And this would be right around $6,000, but we would be able to install these motion detectors, lights, and sirens throughout the entire campus so that we would have coverage around the entire campus. Yes, we still would not have cameras in the northern end, but at least we would have some sort of coverage in the interim.
Questions for Tony?
No, we don't face those.
I guess the treasurer, do we have funding to afford this? Okay, anybody on the screen, go ahead.
So down to zero monthly fee.
No, this is just a one-time cost. Yep.
Unlike the cameras, there
Yes.
is no.
Yeah, the cameras we spend around $300 a month between the AT&T data package and the Deep Sentinel security package. But it's still working great because Brian and I were out on site today and we got yelled at by a guard.
Any questions, Joe, Jim, questions? Sandra, I can't see you. Okay, we have a motion.
I'll move for approval of this James Paquette's proposal of 5732.
Have a motion from Mario, a second.
Second, Joe Brandt.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Tony, just a question. How long would this take to install and activate?
Installation, I think, could probably be done in about a weekend. It's just as quickly as we can get the material. Yeah, James, I think he was on our, I'm not sure.
I am here if you guys have questions.
The question was, how quickly can you get this installed if we say go?
Okay, well, we're going to need a proof of concept first. I'd like to start with the 2 siren array that you guys can see there on the left. Again, this is not really a conventional system. I would have liked to go for a more expensive route, but obviously you guys have a budget and I can respect that. So we're going to have to start out by doing a proof of concept with 2 sirens, getting the solar panels to work correctly. And I'll do that all here at the shop. And if the proof of concept works, which obviously I'll be using my own funds to test that out, then we can go ahead with the estimate number 1.
Thank you, James. Any other questions? All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Did we lose Joe?
No, I'm here.
Okay, did you raise your right hand?
I just did.
Yeah, we can't see it.
Really?
Yeah, would you put up
Yep,
the 1A map?
the 1A,
1A map.
the one with the
The
red.
big
Yeah,
We have left part. Jim, left part is here to talk to us tonight. Rick, I'm sorry, Rick. Okay, Richard, left. I just wanted people here. He owns,
I'm trying to get
he's
it.
right. He's right here.
Mhm.
Correct it, Rick? Yeah. Rick, okay, and he wanted to talk to us tonight. Rick, welcome. Thank you. On meetings, try to get to them, but I don't know they were all persons.
That's good about it.
We all can have access. And, all my thoughts. Can't access it. You have problems with opening that road up there. Since it was opened up here recently for shelter delivery. It's caused more problems for people coming on my property. That puts me and my family in danger and at risk. Highly, because there's nobody around. Nobody can hear anybody scream down there. Me calling 911 until. To me, that's a, I don't know, big concern to me. That's my son's bus stop. Gonna be the next 6 years. Yes, got 4 houses right there that new roads will be back up. So they're not gonna be happy with new road, truck and trailers coming down. They didn't move there to be next to a highway, they moved there to be peace and quiet. And then, wow. Rick, can you go to the screen for us and point out what the road you're talking about, so I make sure we're accurate. So this line is Funk Road, and there's 4 houses right here. And then this is my access to get out to Funk Road. So you open that road up and bring in them tractor trailers and personal vehicles. You're gonna put another red light in there. How am I gonna get out, get to work, how is the school bus gonna get in there and turn around? I mean, you already, the construction vehicles or semi tractor trailers already blocked the school bus multiple times during their delivery. They did come and move them, but my wife had to call somebody, and they had to call somebody else, get a hold of the truck, get the truck moved. And I'm dealing with the noise and the lights, nighttime, all that. Too bad. That building's now above the tree level. There is no buffer at all. Went to the town meeting. Board and a discussion. Sound at the wall. I don't have to ask what the plan or when the plans for that is. Scared of which one to turn. We appreciate your comments. The second issue was sound barrier. Yes, building data. Okay, and you said it hasn't been badly flooded with rain, so and they're working up there. Now they're working over the deal at night. Not only that, my dog can hear everything. I got single pane windows, with 40,000. You ain't, pretty much get by without the dog here. So we're sitting there sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in our dog, and now the dog starts going crazy. It gets tiring for a while.
So I have a question. I assume that the construction traffic goes through there, but can't get on the site, correct? They go on the
So-
road.
Barton and Funk Road are public access roads that connect that do connect via existing roads on Bainbridge. Because of the excessive rain, there was a steel delivery that was on a 10-month schedule. And they could not get from the entrance here at 275 across to parcel C. So they asked if they could have a 6-day access from using that public. The road was open, but opening it into reopening it into Bainbridge, just clearing for the trucks to get in to deliver the steel delivery. So that was the request, so they're accessing their land that they own,
So.
and that's part of the REA.
Did that open up?
I can only speak to the concerns that were brought to me. I did see that there was an issue on Facebook. I put my information out and asked if anyone had any concerns, so please contact me. I did have one citizen reach out about a storm drain that had been damaged by a tire and it was fixed within 48 hours.
Can we at least send a message to, discourage one to come use the construction entrance?
Right, that's not a permitted construction entrance. It was just a short-term utilization, because it's not easy for them to get back there at all.
This is,
It's residential, it's almost.
Mhm.
Rick, I really appreciate the opportunity. The interesting thing is I'm not saying anything that everybody else doesn't know. He lives off Bainbridge, but it gets to his home through Bainbridge. Gets to his home through our property.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Is that the way I'm looking at it?
Mhm.
Well, on that, yeah, but I'll go as far as.
Right, it's a public access road, so I can't tell people they can't go.
I understand, but the trickies of all work.
Mhm.
The unusual thing is it's our property.
Yeah.
It's phase two,
Right,
is what we're looking at.
our land is on both sides of that road.
Rick, I'm assuming that I could arrange the time and I can come and get home from work, and I can come after it. Right now. Yeah, before you leave, give me the phone number, even if it sells bad, you will. Well, I'm not at home, if I got 3 miles in the direction, I got awesome stuff.
Yes, I feel you.
No, I'll get you. And I do have a concern with using Diamond Jim Road as an access road. When you come to the end of Diamond Jim, you have to make an immediate left and an immediate right to get up there. We were talking about the two roads, it's a elementary school. That's a blind corner in both directions.
Yeah.
I've seen some accidents there, and I've almost seen a few accidents.
Well, my guess is, this is me as a engineer, they've probably gotten a lot of accident data that they'll take into account when they do that. So that'll be helpful.
Mr. Riddle, Dr. Riddle.
Make sure the access because of the 10 days or 6 days, one, that is over. Right?
Right, there was just for a steel delivery over on parcel.
Nobody should be using that road.
Well, our construction vehicles are not accessing that road, but anyone, anytime can drive down on Funk Road because it's a public road.
Right, he means.
But I
he means the
understand what
entrance.
Rick is saying in that if you keep following it down, you're gonna wind up in his farm.
He
Yeah,
means they're not driving on the Bainbridge.
no, well, not if they are, they're renting vehicles that are trespassing.
None of our construction people.
Okay, that's.
Right, no,
All right,
Convenience.
Rick, I appreciate you.
Right.
That's what I think you're gonna do in the spirit of the meeting. Certainly, we ought to get this information.
Mhm.
And when the time is right, these are all things we want to make sure the engineers do.
Mhm.
It'll be addressed as much as possible, with whatever final time.
I know Vicky has been involved in discussions with Rick and, with the town, and I know Tony has, but I'm a visual guy. I gotta go out and see it, so I'll call Rick and, go out and see it, and, I agree with you, check this information that we need to have prepared at the appropriate time. on it.
Thank you.
Okay. Take that off, please, Jed.
because I know before we were introduced, I ended up down at your farm too many times.
Quite a meeting today, folks.
Yeah, we're not sharing.
You were there, very good. Okay. Appreciate everybody's attendance and your participation. This time I'll take a motion for adjournment. Second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Have a good evening.
Great, thank you.
I was